No comment.
Thank you, councillors. We can make a start. Close the door. That's well. Thank you, Simon. All better now? I would like to invite the leader to move his recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation as laid out in the papers and that the budget be accepted.
Thank you,
And
councillor.
I look for a seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Stewart. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Lilly to propose your amendment, please. Move speaker on, please. Thank you.
I wish to propose this amendment.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Brodie. Thank you. We're going to have a name vote in favour of Councillor Lilly's recommendation. Those for, please raise your hand. Is there a name vote? It's got to be a name vote, sorry.
Call the names.
It's got to be a name vote. So those who agree with Councillor Lilly's budget proposal, stick your hand up, please.
No. I call the names out.
You call names out, sorry.
Individually.
That's better, yeah. Okay.
Councillor Abraham. Councillor Axford.
Put your hands down, please.
Councillor Axford. Councillor Bertie. Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Brading. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Churchman. Councillor Hastings. Councillor Hobart. Councillor Hollis. Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Kilpatrick. Councillor Mosdell. Councillor Merwell. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Outlaw. Councillor Peace. Councillor Quirk. Councillor Ward. Councillor Whittle. Councillor Andre. Councillor Downer. Councillor Fuller. Councillor Medland. Councillor P.C. Wilcox. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Love. Councillor Lilly. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Barry. Councillor Garrett. Councillor Perks. Councillor Cameron.
Against.
Councillor Smart. And Councillor Stewart.
Against.
That amendment is 12 for, 21 against and 3 abstentions. So the amendment falls. Thank you very much. Councillor Garrett.
Chair, I propose the amendment.
Seconder, Councillor Barry. Thank you very much. And again,
Councillor Abraham. Councillor Axford. Councillor Bertie. Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Brading. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Churchman. Councillor Hastings. Councillor Hobart. Councillor Hollis. Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Kilpatrick. Councillor Mosdell. Councillor Merwell. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Outlaw. Councillor Peace. Councillor Quirk. Councillor Ward. Councillor Whittle. Councillor Andre. Councillor Downer. Councillor Fuller. Councillor Medland. Councillor P.C. Wilcox. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Love. Councillor Lilly. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Barry. Councillor Garrett. Councillor Perks? Councillor Cameron?
Against?
Councillor Smart? Councillor Stewart?
On the second amendment, there was 12 for, 20 votes against, and 4 abstentions. So the amendment falls. Thank you very much. Councillor Andre, would
Thank
you like
you,
to
Chair.
propose your amendment?
I propose the Island Independent Group amendment and recommendations. Thank you.
Second by Councillor Fuller. Thank you very much. Got a name vote again.
Councillor Abraham? Councillor Axford? Councillor Bertie? Councillor Beston?
Against.
Councillor Brading? Councillor Chapman? Councillor Churchman? Councillor Hastings? Councillor Hobart? Councillor Hollis? Councillor Hutchinson? Councillor Kilpatrick? Councillor Mosdell? Councillor Merwell? Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Outlaw? Councillor Peace? Councillor Quirk? Councillor Ward? Councillor Whittle? Councillor Andre? Councillor Downer? Councillor Fuller? Councillor Medland? Councillor P.C. Wilcox? Councillor Stevens? Councillor Jones-Evans? Councillor Love? Councillor Lilly? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Barry? Councillor Garrett? Councillor Perks? Councillor Cameron?
Against?
Councillor Smart? Councillor Stewart?
Third amendment by Councillor Andre. Those for, 12, against, 20, and abstentions, 4. That amendment falls. We move on to the original substantive motion as proposed by Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart, that will be our name vote, please.
Councillor Abraham? Councillor Axford? Councillor Bertie? Councillor Beston? Councillor Brading? Councillor Chapman? Councillor Churchman? Councillor Hastings? Councillor Hobart? Councillor Hollis? Councillor Hutchinson? Councillor Kilpatrick? Councillor Mosdell? Councillor Merwell? Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Outlaw? Councillor Peace? Councillor Quirk? Councillor Ward? Councillor Whittle? Councillor Andre? Councillor Downer? Councillor Fuller? Councillor Medland? Councillor P.C. Wilcox? Councillor Stevens? Councillor Jones-Evans? Councillor Love? Councillor Lilly? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Barry? Councillor Garrett? Councillor Perks? Councillor Cameron? Councillor Smart? Councillor Stewart?
Results from this substantive motion proposal by Councillor Stewart is 23 for, 12 against, and 1 abstention. That one is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to item 7. It's appointment of monitoring officer, paper E, who is just leaving the room. Thank you. Members, you have the paper before you. You've been asked to confirm the extension of Jeff Wild's temporary appointment as monitoring officer whilst the recruitment to a permanent position is completed. We are debating this paper, and may I remind members the requirements of our protocol for member-officer relations, which sets out that neither officers nor members should pass comment about officers in a way which could be taken directly, personally critical, or as undermining that officer. And our protocol on publicity and the media, which says no member should impugn the professional integrity of officers, make personal attacks or undermine respect for officers. I can see no reason why we should deal with this matter in private, as a procedure Rule 13 allows. It has always been the Council's normal practice to consider the appointment of monitoring officer in public in the interest of openness and transparency. So unless any member has a view to the contrary, I will proceed that way. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. I can move the recommendation in the paper and look for a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, seconded. Thank you. Would you like to speak on it?
Thank you, Chairman. I probably had more to do with Mr. Wild as the interim monitoring officer than most councillors. I've always found him extremely professional, courteous, helpful, and he has a wealth of knowledge. This is for a relatively short extension, and as members know, we are required to have a monitoring officer by statute, and so I would propose that we extend Mr. Wild's appointment as per the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other member who wishes to comment? Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I sit on several committees where I have had occasion to ask questions of the monitoring officer. I have always found him to be very clear in his direction. He responds very quickly. We get answers back very quickly, and I think we are very lucky to have him, and I will be supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Councillor Brodie, please.
Chair, I won't be supporting the extension of this appointment of Mr. Wild. Yeah, I've been hamstrung in what I can say in this meeting because it's not in private session, but it's certainly not the impression I've had in the time he's with us in terms of his advice in situations where I have been. It has on occasions either been inaccurate in my view or misleading. I believe that is contrary entirely to what he said at the appointment process, of which I was a member of the panel. I will say no further than that, but I would like it to be recorded when we vote. I don't require a name vote, recorded that I voted against, very much so, and I'll be pleased when we can appoint a substantive monitoring officer who cares about the interests of every member of this council, not just the ruling group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Chair. The way I've come from this is that the appointments committee, the appointment process led to Mr. Wild being appointed, and therefore will have found him to be a suitable and appointable person. So the thing, I have to apply a negative test. Has there anything been done in his time here that would lead me to think that that has been disproven? My view, and I think I've had some dealings with the monitoring officer over the last few weeks, almost months it feels now, is that he has done nothing to suggest that he has not been acting professionally, courteously. I may not have liked his advice, and for somewhat different reasons, I'm constrained in my view on that. But that advice has been provided professionally, through professional means, in a way that I would expect of a legal professional. I've used that word professional 3 times, and I do so deliberately because I do believe we have somebody who professionally meets the requirements of monitoring officer, and so I will support this reappointment, or extension, I should say.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. The leader is next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will be fully supporting his extension. I reflect back on what he's done. I think about the members' briefings that we never got, which we get now. I think about the knowledge and advice I personally have had on a number of issues, whether or not I've wanted it, as Councillor Garrett says, sometimes you need to hear it. I know the work he's done on the town and parish councils, the work he's done on the appeals. I have absolutely no doubt we are dealing with a professional, ethical man, and I'm very happy to support.
Thank you, leader. Councillor Mosdale.
I'll definitely be supporting the extension of the appointment, and if he's not made our permanent monitoring officer, I don't know if he's even going to apply for the job. There's some really, really good practice that he's brought into place in this council that I have felt really, really refreshing. His members' briefings, I send them to the parish councils, they find them useful as well. I have always found him incredibly polite, and I would really struggle with that expression, and in my view he didn't agree with me, so I don't actually want him to stay any longer. You know, we should all, part of this is check and challenge, but the good practices that he has brought in, I think we should ensure that we do continue.
Thank you, Councillor Mosdale. Councillor Love, you've got 3 minutes, thanks.
Thank you. I entirely agree with Councillor Mosdale. I found the monitoring officer to be completely approachable. I love the briefing papers that go around, and I shall be supporting and encouraging him as far as I can to apply for the job and to remain.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly, please. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I wasn't going to say anything, but I did feel that sometimes I have to point out that I beg to differ with my 1957 colleague, and in this case I do. We've had a bit of difficulty in Ryde, and we had some very good advice and support from Mr Wild, and he was particularly very supportive in my dealings with him. So I'd want to go on record in actually recording that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Pearcy-Wilcox.
I'd just like to say, like Councillor Lilly, we had an ongoing issue for about 18 months in Cowes on contacting Jeff when he came into post. He was very assertive. He was black and white. This is the rules, that's that. There was no grey area. Absolutely assertive and superb. Couldn't fault him. So, yeah, I should be supporting.
Thank you very much. Julie Jones-Evans, Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd echo colleagues' comments that I think Mr Wild has been approachable and, above all, very efficient. Some of these situations where members of this council and town, parish and community councils can find themselves and can be very uncomfortable, and if they drag on, can actually affect someone's mental health. So the fact that he's able to clear up so much of the backlog has been, very, very good. As I say, black and white, you know where you are, that's what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've debated this as far as we could, and we go to the vote. Councillor Brodie noted that you would not vote for this. Did you want a name vote, or shall we just vote and make the note? Okay, it's not a name vote. Thank you. Can we have a vote, please? Those in favour of extending the post, raise your hand, please. Those against? Councillor Brodie. And any abstentions? No abstentions. The vote carries. Thank you very much. If we can call them back, please. we go on to number 8, item number 8, which is a pay policy, paper F. That is in your pack, and I'm sure you've read it, but I'll ask Councillor Hutchinson to move it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This, of course, is a statutory report which comes before Council at this time every year. There usually is very little reason to make substantive change. If you check paragraph 3, it does identify there dozen or so minor amendments that follow on from previous years, and in the report, of course, it lists the kind of amendments and when they were made in all previous years. Only one thing I'd comment on, which has been raised by members before, which is in connection with the gender gap that the report comments on. We're actually pretty good here in this authority. I think local authorities generally are good. But it's worth noting that there is a substantial majority of women in part-time appointments, I think about 79%. We assume that this is largely because women find the part-time employment fits with the caring duties either for elderly or for children that more frequently falls to women than tends to fall to men. So there is an oddity in that. Conversely, at the other end of the scale, where we have salaries of over 40,000, women are well represented, 61% in this authority, and even in the higher salaries, it is a percentage in favour of women. So I think we are doing our bit. The only other point that I'd comment on is paragraph 5.4 on page F12, which does confirm that we will pay the nationally agreed pay award at 2%. And as I said when we did the budget report, for every percent or 1.5% that we go over that, we're going to have to find either 600 or 900,000 pounds. So that report commits us to continue to pay the nationally approved pay awards. Other than that, Chairman, I recommend that the Council approves this new.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Stewart. Thank you. Would you like to speak, Councillor Stewart?
No, can't do that.
Any other member wish to speak on this item? Councillor Lilly, please.
I wish to actually make a declaration because my wife actually works for the Isle of Wight Council, so I will not vote.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lam.
Thank you. I would just like to make one point. Rather than us assuming, because I think there's an important word there, assuming of the part-time knowledge of why we have less women working for us, I think I'd like us to look into that and be more certain and discover more with more accuracy, so that we can then address it properly if necessary. I just think we need to know more about that. I don't want to assume anything. I want to know why.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lam. Councillor Stewart.
So, Chair, yeah, I'm going to take the same position as Councillor Lilly. My wife is employed by local authority, so I won't be voting.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other member wish to speak? If not, we go to a vote. Those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against? No one against. Any abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Great. Thank you. The recommendation carries. Thank you. We move on to item 9, which is constitution matters, committee allocation, paper G. We've had this before in front of us. And I will recommend option A and option B. We take them together as it sets out in the paper. We've all read it. We looked at it before, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you. Any member wish to speak on this? Councillor Andre, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a point of clarification. We're told that if one or more members votes against the recommendation, then the Council will agree to option C. Can you please explain the situation regarding abstentions?
Before I answer that, can I just bring Councillor Hutchinson back in, please? Thank you.
All I was going to say, Chairman, that this obviously is the modified report from a previous report which was brought before this council. One of the issues that was raised at the last report was the number of unfilled places that we had, and I'm pleased to report, so far as the Conservative group is concerned, we now have appointees to all of those places. I think the other element that had actually worried people, apart from the proportionality, was how we were going to fill vacant places on committee. And my recollection of that was that members were not that happy with reverting to a situation where the committee could determine who it wished to put on the committee if there had been an unfilled vacancy not appointed by the appropriate group leader. The paragraph 18 of this report now actually confirms that group leaders will be the ones to make the place. I don't think that will stop groups doing what they currently do, which is to offer somebody else their place if it is accepted by both sides. As far as I'm aware, this report does not prevent us from doing that.
Thank you, Councillor. Jeff, could you clarify this, please? If option A and B is not voted for, we revert to option C ultimately.
Yes, in answer to Councillor Andre's question, abstentions do not count as a vote against. So abstentions would not trigger the option C. It would have to be a vote against.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Stewart.
Chair, thank you. Just at the previous meeting, there were some very specific details given of numbers on committees, etc. Just for the record, all Conservative positions have now been filled.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Any other member? Councillor Brodie.
Chair, you will recall that this was a bit of a dog's breakfast at the last full council. The report that was brought before us ended up in us in an entirely pointless debate, and it was deferred until today, and a lot of the stuff has now been taken out of it. The key issue that suddenly arose at the last meeting was the issue of reverse political proportionality, as it's known, for the corporate scrutiny committee, and we were made aware halfway through the discussion that if we voted against that paper, reverse proportionality would be lost, and that was something that people were pretty fearful of at the last meeting. Since then, there has been a meeting of group leaders, which nobody's referred to yet, to try and establish a way forward. And I have to say to you that I have considered very deeply whether I'm going to be that one person that votes against this. And I'm going to explain why. Because I think that this council, in nearly 3 years now, has not done proper scrutiny whatsoever. Corporate scrutiny is allowed by the leader and the chief executive to pursue an agenda that's laid down for them, in my view. It is only allowed to pursue certain elements of the council's work. Whilst I'm entirely relaxed about health and adult social care, which is a statutory committee, being separate, and entirely relaxed about children's services, a very serious committee, being separate, I feel no reason for neighbourhoods and regeneration to be separate from corporate scrutiny. It is the area that most affects our residents, and yet it meets once a quarter. The Corporate Scrutiny Committee meets every month except for those months when there isn't a cabinet, 9 times a year. And I do believe, and I've said this at the meeting of the group leaders, to the leader, that firstly, they need to start looking at freeing up the Scrutiny Committee to pursue its own way of working, and secondly, abolishing the Neighbourhoods and Regeneration Policy and Scrutiny Committee. I can't think of a more ridiculous term for a committee, frankly, policy and scrutiny. It's a contradiction in terms. And I am very, well, if you don't want me to finish, I won't. If you don't let me finish, I'll vote against it.
I'm worried about the time. I'm worried about the time tonight.
Yeah.
There's quite a few to
if you want, are you let me speak?
Do you want to finish?
Yeah, okay. It is a very important issue for me. I hate the cabinet and scrutiny model of local government. It was that, I won't use the word I would like to describe, Tony Blair's government that introduced this nonsense into local government that has classed people into first, second and third class councillors. I have on 2 occasions been chair of proper scrutiny committees that had its eye on everything. If the chief executive would try to tell me what to do, they know what they could have done, to be frank. And I've explained my views on the way it's been over the last 3 years to our last 2 chairs. The current chair knows my view of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. His predecessor, Councillor Fuller, knows as well. I just need some convincing that by continuing to vote for reverse political proportionality, that we're actually going to have some serious scrutiny allowed on this council with an overwhelming Conservative majority. If I'm not convinced of that, I don't see the point of it, to be frank. I think it's a waste of time. I've sat at the occasional meeting of them and I think, why on earth are they there? It is dominated by cabinet members. It is dominated by the leader doing updates constantly. The way in which I try to set it up so during the independent administration that Councillor Stewart never changed when he succeeded me has been entirely abolished. It is failing entirely. And I would like some clarification before I decide on which way I'm going to vote on this. Thank you for letting me speak, Chair.
Councillor Axford.
I'd like to comment on the situation where there is a vacancy on a committee for a long time and who decides to fill that vacancy. As you know, I chair the Pension Fund Committee and we've had a vacancy on that for over 6 months now. I think it's something which is allocated to the Island Independent Group, and we've gone through more than one leader of the Island Independent Group without anybody being appointed. There is some suggestion in the paperwork, I'm sorry there's so much there I can't remember which bit, which says the members of the committee can decide who to bring onto the committee if nobody comes along. It seems to have been put back to the leaders of the various groups to do that. But if it is, what happens if they don't appoint anybody? That's my problem. We've had a lot of problems finding, worrying about whether we've got a quorum or not for our meetings because of this, because it's only a small committee in the first place. And as I say, I'm very unhappy the way it's being left.
Thank you, Councillor Axford. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I'm one of the independents that is not in a group, according to the paper. I'm an Island Independent Network member, actually. But I no doubt I've been shoehorned into a position on a committee. I've not heard what the committee is, whether it's going to utilise my talents to the full, whether it's going to be my appropriate of timeliness, etc. We need to make sure that when we shoehorn people into committees and into the committee structure, that one, they're consulted, and two, that they're available and they have the talent or the inclination to go on that committee. And so, I don't know about Councillor Brodie voting against it, but there's someone sat behind him that's thinking along the same lines. And I do think we're going the right way with it, but let's try and get it right from the start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I going or not? Thank you, Chairman. As someone who's invariably in front of the scrutiny committee for something or other, I would like to say publicly, I think Councillor Garrett has done a first-class job as chair of that, and his committee members as well. I probably get a harder time from the Conservative members on the scrutiny panel, and you know, I do think they do a good job. I think Councillor Brodie is referring to the breadth of subjects rather than the intensity. I may be wrong, but what I would say is the intensity is certainly there.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. Nice to be back. I think you have to look at this and say, I've seen some downsides when I was last a councillor, and the one thing that really got my goat on some of the scrutinies or the committees I've been on is grandstanding. And I, for one, when I was chairman of planning, would not allow any grandstanding at all. It seems to have crept into various places. I don't have a problem with you know, you should be an independent mind in scrutiny. You're not there to push necessarily a political agenda. Of course, you think differently sometimes, but you should be above that. And I think for the sake of disciplined organisation and the same, I shall be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Councillor Mosdale.
I think for me, when we look at scrutiny, I think sometimes over the last few years, I think we've forgotten what scrutiny should be about. It should be about that critical friend, and it doesn't matter what political hat you are wearing. You have a role as a member of scrutiny to analyse and question stuff, no different to meetings that we have at Cabinet that sometimes you can imagine get reasonably heated, might not get heated here, but as you know, I'm probably not the quietest of people behind closed doors. But that's what scrutiny is. It is that critical friend, and it shouldn't matter what the proportionality is. The most important thing of it is the chair and how it is run. And once again, I'd like to say, Councillor Garrett has been absolutely excellent in ensuring that. And I would hope that in April he carries on again. But for me, we have to remember it's not there to politically point score. It's not there to grandstand. It's not there to make those statements. It's there to look at the policies that are important for this council.
Thank you, Councillor. No councillor wish to speak. Councillors Hutchinson, would you like to sum up?
I don't think there's anything I need to add. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, fine. Then we will move to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands. A and B. We're taking A and B together. Raise your hand, please, if you're in favour of that. Thank you. You are voting on recommendation A and B, which is the council recommend and the council agree that to continue to disregard the rules of political proportionality when appointing members to the corporate scrutiny committee, subject to no member objecting, and confirm the allocation of places as set out in Appendix A of the report. B, to accept calculations determining the aggregate number of committee places and the allocations on a political proportionate basis for all committees other than the Corporate Scrutiny Committee as set out in Appendix 1. That's what we're waiting for. Okay. Those members for the recommendation, please raise your hands. Those members against? Abstentions? (14). 18 for, 4 against, and 14 abstentions. Thank you. In that case, we'll have to revert to option C, which says appoint all members to all committees on the basis of political proportionality and accept the calculations determining the aggregate number of committee places and their allocations on a political proportional basis, as shown in Appendix 2. We revert to that automatically. Councillor Brady.
Chair, can we have clarification on that? I don't see that that necessarily follows. I think that's a supposition within the report. We've already been led, in my view, well, we've opened a Pandora's box here last month, to be frank, and we're just getting deeper and deeper into it. And I'll just remind you what I said on an earlier agenda item. We shouldn't be in this situation. Thank you, Chair.
I think I can ask our monitoring officer to clarify, but I'm sure because we voted against A and B, where councillors voting and abstaining against it, we revert to option C as a matter of course automatic. Is that right, Jeff?
The only basis on which political proportionality can be disapplied, as it was before this vote for Corporate Scrutiny Committee, is if no member votes against the rules of political proportionality being varied for that committee. As we had more than one member voting against the disapplication of political proportionality on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, but the motion was nevertheless passed by a majority in this chamber, therefore the strict rules of political proportionality have to apply to all committees. That's what the law says, that's what statute provides. It can only be disapplied if there is no member voting against.
Councillor Brady.
But that doesn't preclude any of the other appendices to the report. Mr. Wild is steering us purely and simply down the route of Appendix 2. There are other appendices.
Sorry, we can't criticise officers for... We have got a constitution
well, I think
and we look at the rules.
Wrong.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. We have 1 hour left and I propose we move to the next item.
Do you want to move? Sorry, this matter has been concluded and voted on. We move on to the next item. Item 10. Hampshire Fire Service, Risk and Safety Plan, paper J.
I don't accept that. That we should be given the opportunity to propose one of the other appendices. Just because the report that I had no involvement in other than an early consultation doesn't recommend any of them. What is to stop me as a member of this council proposing, say, Appendix 5, I think it is, which would mean everybody having to get their fingers out and do some work for the allowance that they get out of the people of the Isle of Wight?
It's been
Is there anything to stop that? Come on, this is ridiculous. You
Yeah,
can't
sorry.
just...
We have voted against A and B.
Chair, I do hope that everybody realises the position that we are now in, where we won't be able to, you know, we're in a mess now.
Could we, let me just bring John in here and he can explain. Thank you.
So, Chairman, my understanding of the position that we're in is that we've voted against, we can't go with options A and B because of the vote that we've now taken. So we do need to take another option. It could be from one of the options within the paper, it could be another option. It requires a member to move an option and for it to be seconded, and then we can debate on that particular option. So as Councillor Brodie said, it could be any of the other appendices set out within the paper. However, the recommendation that has been put in the paper is that option C is the way forward because it does it does give political proportionality across all committees, but I think we do need to debate for it to be moved and voted upon so we can move on from the item as has been said.
Thank you, John. Councillor Stewart.
Well, in the light of the vote that I've listened to, I'm going to propose that we move to option C and I'll look for a seconder.
Councillor Hutchinson, second. Thank you. Options. Do you want to speak on this, Councillor Brodie? No. Could we put this one to the vote, please? Option C, we proposed and seconded. Does anybody member wish to speak on option C? No. We go straight to the vote. Option C. Those members for, raise your hands, please. Those members against? Option C. And any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. That carries. Thank you very much. We move on to the next item. Item 10, Hampshire Isle of Wight Fire Rescue Services Plan, paper J. The leaders to move this one. You've got 3 minutes to go forward. Thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this paper, members, is to align our fire safety plan here on the Isle of Wight with that of Hampshire. Last week I attended the Hampshire Fire... Oh, sorry, I've already gone.
So, it's been on the running order, it's on item 11.
Shall I carry on?
Carry on, please, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I attended the Hampshire Fire Authority meeting last week, and at that meeting, this plan was approved by Hampshire Fire Authority. Our approval this evening will mean that we are excuse me, aligned with Hampshire in terms of our integrated risk management process and our safety plan. And I see we have the Deputy Fire Officer in the room this evening, and I thank him for all the work he's done behind the scenes on this. Our joint safety plan sets out our purpose, which is together we make life safer. This means making our community safer, our staff safer, and our organisation safer. The Constitutional Institute, which oversaw the public consultation on this, is referred to at Appendix A, and it highlights the support for this approach and aligns with the recommendations from HMIC Fire and Rescue Service, which is the inspectorate body. Working in partnership with Hampshire, we look to progress our joint Shadow Fire Authority in April of this year. We will then move towards the formation of the new Hampshire and Isle of Wight Combined Fire Authority in April 2021. I can inform members that the Secretary of State yesterday signed the relevant documents for the Combined Fire Authority to come forward, and the document was laid before Parliament today. I think it has 31 days to be considered and then will become the policy. We have, for a number of years, experienced the positive benefit of joint working with Hampshire in terms of our fire and rescue service provision. Approval of the paper this evening ensures that we continue on that pathway in the best interests of the community of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and it is on that basis that I put before you option 1, that full council approves the safety plan as attached to Appendix B, and I look for a seconder for this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Admiral, would you like to speak now? Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Or Councillor Barry is first.
It's a question, really. Going through this plan and the risk assessment, there's no mention of what would happen if there's a major fire or two on the Isle of Wight, like we've had in the past when Boots burnt down and the leather shop in Rye burnt down. How will we get the help from Hampshire if, like recently, the Isle of Wight is cut off from the mainland regarding ferries, etc.? The ferries seem to stop now at the drop of a hat. There was a little while ago, people couldn't get off the island because somebody hadn't turned up for work. So what's going to happen? Surely in this plan, I know there's ethnicity and all this, there's all sorts of lovely words, and economic risk, heritage risk, but the real risk, I think, to this island is if we had the prison was on fire, anything like that, how do we get people across here in the way the weather's changing?
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
Well, I just want to say, in my 17 years, 17 continuous years that is, on this council, I have never known a service that has taken so many twists, turns, changes and hits. And yet, despite that, our fire brigade has remained totally dedicated and thoroughly professional. They continue to keep our residents safe, and I would sincerely like to salute and thank them for the work they do, because honestly, I've never known anything like this, the amount of different things that you've had to go through, so well done.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Any other member wish to speak on this? I'll ask this leader to sum up, please. Oh, Councillor Hollis. Sorry.
If I must make a comment on Councillor Barry's comment, it's the fire service who put out fires, not the ferries. There's no change in that respect, and it may well be if one of the ferry services people didn't turn up to work, but living in Cowes, we have Red Funnel, and when they run very well. Thank you. Right, it's the same. It's the same time.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I think the professionals within the brigade, with this integrated risk management plan, have taken everything into account when they've moved this forward. I think what we've got to realise is that the bus left the bus stop a couple of years back when we decided to go down this route. Now, in the budget paper, which I missed the debate on, there was an amount moved over to Hampshire. I think it was $500,000. Sorry, next year. Well, there we go. So that's going over. We've lost the freehold of our fire stations and assets there. But let's stick with what we've got tonight. Tonight is the IRMP. It's about how the professionals are going to tackle things, and as Councillor P.C. Wilcox has already said, they haven't failed us yet. I think that there's been good input from all sides, and indeed consultations gone on and quite readily been accepted. I think that the Home Office is going to be looking at the governance of, and indeed the IRMP as well, probably in more depth than anyone in this chamber has so far tonight. So I shall be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No other councillors should wish to speak. Councillor Steele, would you like to sum up, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just address the question from Councillor Berry, and actually most colleagues have already addressed it. It's no different to where we are now. We already have additional numbers of officers here on the Isle of Wight, predicated on the basis that we are an island. That is exactly the same for the position with regarding to the police service. And there are also arrangements with the ferry companies when they are running, that we can, if we need to, get additional resources here. And I would also echo the comments by various members. I think on so many occasions now our firefighters show their commitment and standards to the Isle of Wight, and I actually have no concerns in that quarter, and I don't think that'll be any different. And I actually don't think the community will notice the difference in the service they get now. In fact, if anything, we'll benefit from the experience we get from having Hampshire and the island working together. I've been over to Eastleigh, I've engaged with the officers of Blue Shift at Newport, and anybody that's dealt with them, I know Councillor Outlaw did. We are very lucky. We have a good fire service, and I don't see this to cause us any difficulties.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we've discussed this up to the point where we need to go to the vote. Those in favour of the proposal, please raise your hands, please. Anybody against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to item 11, which is corporate parenting terms of reference, corporate parenting board terms of reference, and it is Councillor Brading. You've got 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a long evening tonight, and disappointed this is at the end of the list, but it's a very important paper that I've got in front of you this evening, and I'm grateful actually everyone, apart from Councillor Medland, takes their corporate parenting responsibility seriously enough to still be here.
Point of order, he's had to get a bus home and this is the last bus to the back of the island.
Carry on, Councillor.
Okay. I will carry on. The Isle of Wight Council, we have a corporate parenting board whose role is to lead on ensuring that the corporate parenting responsibilities of the council and partner agencies towards looked after children and care leavers are being met. This is a non-decision making board, not a formal committee of the council. So we're taking an opportunity of looking at our revised terms and conditions. This sets out the council's vision for children and care leavers and the purpose of the board, accountability of the board, roles and responsibilities, membership and support to the board. It's really encouraging that many members actually have turned up and attended corporate parenting board meetings, and I encourage many more to do so to engage with our young people. The board is attended by representatives from health, representatives from education, children's care, school nurses, and more importantly, from our HYPE group. So we hear what our young people have to say, and they've shared their experiences with us. So by reviewing our terms and conditions, we made sure they're up to date. Ofsted actually made a comment about our board, saying our board is really effective and we're inclusive and a wide-ranging membership. It's all about really working in partnership for the benefit of our young people, because all the young people on the island deserve the best start in life we can give them, and vulnerable people make sure they're supported fully through the whole process. So through the consultation, we revised our terms and conditions. We discussed it at our last board meeting in the 4th of December. And before you is the paper, which I'll take any questions on, but the options are that we adopt the revised terms and conditions, terms of reference rather. We do comply fully with the Children's Social Work Act of 2017. So I'd like this policy to be 100% supported as we are corporate parents, and I look for a seconder for my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Seconded. Thank you very much. Any councillor wish to speak on this item? You speak on that as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do take my responsibility as a corporate parent very seriously. We are all corporate parents as councillors, but I do appreciate that some people have more time than others. But I would encourage you, because as a corporate parent, it really has opened my eyes, sitting on this committee. These terms of reference that have been brought before us, should have been in place before, but weren't. So this is really, I mean, well, I say it should be a formality, but it's more than that. It's really details what we should be doing, that commitment that we should be making to our looked after children. I'd like to echo what Councillor Brading said in the fact that sitting on the corporate parenting board and is absolutely invaluable to hear from the various different people, officers that are involved. And it is a very, very big team and a very effective team of very, very good officers. That you know, we have a duty, we have a responsibility, and these terms of reference are bringing that all together. Just to put it in perspective, Councillor Brading mentioned the Ofsted. Previously in Ofsted, it was actually brought to our attention that we were not fulfilling our function as corporate parents. But I'm very pleased to say that following that, people have rallied round, and we now do have very committed members. And as I say, I very much value my role as a corporate member. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Any member wish to speak? Councillor Lilly.
I just wish to say that I totally support this. I don't go to the parenting board meetings because that would be inappropriate due to my wife's work within that. But that doesn't mean that I totally actually accept the responsibilities of a corporate parent, and I totally support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member wish to speak on this? If not, Councillor Brody.
Yeah, I would just like to say something briefly. I've got no doubt of the good intentions of Councillor Brady and everybody who sits on this board. I attended it from 2013 to 2017 most of the time, and it's a very useful way of enlightening yourself as to your responsibilities as a corporate parent, because of course back in 2013 when the then Conservative administration took this council into special measures, one of the things that was massively criticised was the lack of commitment to corporate parenting by most elected members. Now, I went along for a while. I haven't been under this administration. That's not for political disinterest or anything like that. It's just I've got other priorities at the moment. But one of the things that always struck me was that you'd always try and get one or two young people along. And I used to feel really sorry for them, because it would be a room full of suits and very senior officers, etc. And they must have been shaking in their boots, you know, being expected to share their experiences, you know, of being in the care system or whatever. And I know many years ago, I was a supportive landlord to a young man who also went to a couple of those. And he told me it was absolutely frightening to death. He was persuaded by the children's participation officer to go along. And I don't know if there are other better ways sometimes in which we as corporate parents can engage with younger people. I know we sometimes get invited to various things that I'm sure some members get to, I never get to. But it just seems that this is not just about having the corporate parenting board patting ourselves on the back and agreeing the terms of reference. It's also about actually engaging with young people, which, you know, I try to do within the community I represent as much as I can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brady. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I feel that I should, because we've had a few things thrown at the former administration of Island Independence. And Councillor Brodie just touched on where we were and the travel that this authority has gone through and is still going through. That journey started when we had to sign over and link up with Hampshire County, and we did so very, very quickly, within 2 weeks of the Island Independent Administration forming forming that ruling administration. What I want to say is that at that time, there were quite a few concerned cases that weren't open. We had instigated a Children's Improvement Board. And I know, because we still got the professionals from Hampshire that absolutely pulled that together for us. And those are the people that you're working with and will continue to work with. And I think that I should be voting for this and most positively. But I think that there's a direction of travel. And Councillor Andre said, oh, well, it wasn't as good as it is now. No, you're probably right. But we're on a pathway, and it's a pathway of improvement. The same with education, the same with our children's care. It's come from a very low baseline to where it is today. And all thanks to the professionals that came on board at a time when we, as the Island Independents, put £2 million extra into children's services to get that Children's Improvement Board off the ground, chaired by a professor from the mainland, and taken it forward. And I think that we are where we are today, moving in a more positive way because of the groundwork that was done back at the start of the Island Independence. And I think that, you know, your administration has taken it on, and great, because it is Every Child Matters, and it is our future. And if we can actually keep moving it forward, then that's what it's all about. As Councillor Brodie said, I haven't been along over the last couple of years, but if I can, I will get there, and that's it. But I think that there should be a commitment from all councillors within this chamber to make the effort and double our enthusiasm and backing for the board.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor Brodie, to sum up, please.
So briefly sum up, I think Councillor Brodie, Councillor Stevens, your attendance would be great. I'd love you to see you at Corporate. You know my views on playing politics with children. I won't do it. The board has been on a journey since we went in with Hampshire. The journey started. The journey is continuing. Hampshire, in fact, have actually come and observed our corporate parenting board now to learn from what we do. And it's right, it's what Councillor Brodie said about young people have to be coerced into coming. They come voluntarily now. I give them time slots. We get hard to run to an agenda when they like to chip in at various times during the meeting, but we do have young people coming. And it's really down to, we have a guy called Stephen Woodford, our participation lead, who does things like have your say weeks and really engage with the young people, gets their views. Simple things we've changed for them, like we give them 100% discount on council tax. Doesn't mean an awful lot, but to them, getting a start on the, continuing their journey, it's been a great benefit to them. And there's another motion I'm going to bring forward very shortly, something else they've come up with that I've left off the agenda tonight because it's a long agenda. So I'll bring it to the next one. But please, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Brodie, you've been more than welcome to attend the meeting and participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brodie. The recommendation is to adopt the revised terms of the corporate parenting strategy. Those in favour of the recommendation, raise your hands, please. I believe that's unanimous. Anybody against? Nobody against? And any abstentions? No abstentions. That's unanimous and it carried. Thank you very much. We move on to item 12, and this motion submitted under Procedure Rule 11 of the Constitution. We've got a motion submitted by Councillor Lilly. You've got 5 minutes to put your motion, please.
Thank you. 2 years ago, I presented this motion, and particularly the response was very much about getting an island deal and communicating. And I do recognise that the Conservative administration and the MP, who is now actually chair of the Islands Parliament Committee, have actually been trying to get one. But we're 2 years on and no deal has yet appeared. I therefore bring back the idea of the Act. And I particularly feel that we've got 4 options of the future to try and get a good deal for and the right deal and the social justice for island residents. And one is we continue to try and get a island deal through negotiations. 2, we explore with Hampshire County Council that Isle of Wight reverts to a county only in name. We are moving a lot of our services under the management of Hampshire, and perhaps that might be something we should explore further. For me, the third option of the Isle of Wight Council with an Island Act that will enable more autonomy and provide us as an empowered island the flexibility to make decisions to resolve its issues through self-determination is the way forward. Powers such as being able to perhaps explore putting a levy on the monopoly of the ferry companies, ways of bringing further money into the economy ourselves. Or cleverly, perhaps we need to explore an island deal, options like Hampshire, and an Island Act, which shows our residents that we're exploring all options. So one of the reasons why I want you to support that we start that exploration is I think that is one option that we haven't got on the table at this moment in time. One that gets the UK government once and for all to accept we're an island. The Solent is too expensive to cross. Our housing needs should be fixed to our housing waiting list and not a fictional number set by Westminster. And housing affordability is not set at 80% of a market price, but 60% with a link to the reality of island low wages, 0 contract hours and seasonal work. Planning that protects our biosphere, green space, unique environment, not threaten it. And we provide real opportunities for future generations with high-skilled jobs on the island that's actually been mentioned by other members across the way. We go from year to year hoping the government recognises Ireland as an island, and we have unique issues as an island. We need more than promises. We need a long-term solution that will endure changes of government and Brexit. We need a solution that would empower the island to take control of its destiny and future. We need a clear island identity. We need a new island movement, and I'm speaking to you not as your political parties, but as islanders, right? When people in Shetland, right, or the Scottish Islands, they don't actually go into their political parties, they talk as Shetlanders. And we should be starting more cross-party, or without party, and talking as islanders. We need an island campaign. We need specific rights and social justice as residents of an island divided by the sea from mainland UK. We need legislation and we need an Act of Parliament. I noticed that it's been proposed by the other side an amendment which completely changes the whole wording of my Act. I presume that all the members on the other side will vote for that amendment. So I am going to withdraw. I've made my point. I will now withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. The motion is withdrawn. Therefore, we move on to item 13, which is members' question time to the leader. We've got 30 minutes for that. And there's questions submitted in writing by Councillor Lilly to the leader. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I must apologise to Councillor Lee, first of all, because I keep spelling his name Lilly, which I think is a flower, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, though I missed the E out, I think.
If you remember the famous Australian cricketer, it was Liley.
So he asked effectively 4 questions, and I'll endeavour to answer them all collectively. I firstly would like to congratulate the local stakeholders in Ryde for coming together with the Isle of Wight Council to develop a place plan for Ryde. We talk about these things sometimes a bit libbly, but this is a really, really good piece of work. It's the same as I've seen at Newport, and I congratulate Julie and all of those that are involved in that, because this is the way we put the building blocks in to get the support. The plan represents an excellent basis for the beginning of a new collaborative relationship in taking forward regeneration of our key towns. The investment in Island Line, which for members may recall, has been agreed and will be supported, collectively totals £25 million on the pier. If the Towns Fund comes good, which we think it will, £15 million at the Esplanade and £28 million on the Island Line itself. And that's all going to help the connectivity, which is so important for our islanders and for the other people. The good news now is the funding Ryde interchange, alongside the £1 million investment in the Heritage High Street programme, just demonstrates the value of this partnership working in a bright, progressive future for the town on the beach. I can confirm that under this island Conservative administration, there are no plans for housing development to be introduced on the land under our control at Ryde Esplanade. Secondly, I can also confirm that under this Island Conservative administration, there are no plans for housing development at Nicholson Road beyond that which has already been approved and proposed. I can also confirm that the Island Conservative administration, there are no specific plans for future housing development at Apley Field. Whilst the initial draft island plan identified Apley Field as a potential housing site, this will be reviewed in the light of the consultation progress and our current work reviewing island housing numbers and a stock take of current housing proposals in Ryde East. It is worth noting that the wider public use of the field as green space is currently compromised by a lease to the Archers, which has still got 7 years to go. And due to the number of arrowheads on the field, we need to consider that. We fully support the aims of the Ryde Place Plan to enable the widest potential use of green space, and we will work with Ryde Regeneration Group to achieve this. I can also confirm that under the Island Conservative administration, there are no plans for housing to be built on St Thomas's car park at Ryde. I cannot, of course, although I may well be able to shortly, speak for any future administration, particularly if there is a non-Conservative administration. So you asked if it's for life, and I can't do the life bit.
Thank you. Can I have that in writing as well, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, and thank you for your patience and discipline. Thank you very much. I close the meeting.